Hello everyone, and welcome to our second video recording in our course with experts specialized in the European Neighbourhood Policy. My name is Teodor Moga, and I'm lecturer at the Center for European Studies at the Alexandru Ioan Cuza University of Iași, Romania. And we are delighted to have Sergiy Gerasymchuk as our guest in this series. Sergiy Gerasymchuk is the Deputy Executive Director of the Foreign Policy Council Ukrainian Prism, one of the top Ukrainian think tanks dealing with foreign policy, security and public diplomacy. He is also the Regional Initiatives and Neighborhood Program Director in the same think tank, and he has written extensively on the European Neighbourhood Policy and the Eastern Partnership, our main subjects in the second unit of our MOOC, dedicated to the EU's foreign policy instruments in the Eastern neighborhood. Sergiy, many thanks for accepting our invitation and welcome to our online platform. I will start with some general questions, which are linked to the topics covered by our second class. Sergiy, how would you generally assess the efficiency of the neighborhood instruments in relation to the post-Soviet countries in Eastern Europe?
Well, let me start with a couple of reflections on the European Neighbourhood Policy and the Eastern Partnership in particular. The very essence of the Eastern Partnership was to present to the neighboring Eastern countries something new in comparison to the previous status quo in the relations with the EU. But the Eastern Partnership per se was a sort of a compromise. The point was that most of Eastern Partnership countries were expecting membership perspective. And they still do, in particular Ukraine, Georgia, and the Republic of Moldova. On the other hand, the EU, after the last wave of enlargement, was sort of reluctant, lost appetite for further enlargement. And the countries of the core of the EU were not that eager to accept more and to promise more to the countries outside of the European Union. So it was mostly Poland and Sweden who promoted the idea of Eastern Partnership as a sort of substitute to the accession perspective, but still something more than the general European neighborhood framework. Both Poles and Swedes, in particular Minister Sikorski and Minister Bildt, invested a lot of their efforts and even reputation into the project. And finally, they managed to persuade both the core EU countries, in particular Germans, that there is a need for something special for the Eastern countries, and to persuade the Eastern countries' leaders that Eastern Partnership is something better than European Neighbourhood Policy. So this compromise was conceptually framed into the Eastern Partnership instrument, and it started working. That was better than the European Neighbourhood Policy, because the association instrument was within this tool. And actually 3 out of 6 Eastern Partnership countries expressed their consent on such an instrument and basically signed association agreements. It was, again, Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine, whereas the rest still belong to the framework, also have some different priorities. Azerbaijan is sort of hesitated whether to accept integration with the EU or with Russia, and tries to promote its sovereign democracy, as they call it, the concept very close to the Russian sovereign democracy. Armenia invested a lot into approximation with the EU, but then changed its priorities suddenly. And that was a decent blow to the European Union, because everything was going very smoothly. But at one moment, the Armenian leadership decided to change their vector. And Belarus, on the one hand, is promoted by Poles and also by Lithuanians as a neighboring country. However, we are all aware about the regime of Lukashenko and the obstacles it causes to the European integration of Belarus. So all in all, at the moment, we have the situation when three countries are moving ahead with their European agenda, and three other countries have different priorities, and there is certain uncertainty in the situation.
From your perspective, what are the main deficiencies of European neighborhood policy and the Eastern Partnership? What are the main stumbling blocks which preclude these instruments to deliver better results in the region?
When speaking about the opportunities provided by the European Neighbourhood Policy and Eastern Partnership in particular, of course, the EU is applying this instrument as one of the tools of its soft power and normative power. Basically, the EU still stick to this normative power concept and promoting this normative power ideas in the region and in the neighborhood. Certainly, it opens some opportunities in terms of approximation, even without the accession perspective, because the countries who accept Eastern Partnership rules and who signed association agreements in particular, they have to apply reforms in their societies, in their political systems, in their economic systems. And by doing so, they are improving themselves. There is certain progress in different fields, and the countries are approaching, although with a different speed, but still approaching European standards, which makes them closer to the EU. And again, that is in compliance with the ideas of many German scholars, that even without giving accession perspective, we can assure accession by different fields, so sectoral accession, sort of. And by this sectoral accession, we still improve the situation in the neighborhood, and we still project European normative power outside. Speaking about the obstacles, very often scholars and politicians here in the Eastern Partnership countries emphasize that the very idea, the very concept of Eastern Partnership is sort of artificial one, because there is no Eastern Partnership region with its own identity. That's just a combination of countries with two different ideas about their future, two different political systems, and two different expectations regarding the EU. And the critics highlight that you cannot put into one basket the country which is basically part of Russia, like Belarus, the country which belongs to Eurasian Union, like Armenia, the country which is basically rather Asian than European, like Azerbaijan, and three countries that have signed association agreement and more than once claimed accession perspective. So again, that's sort of compromise. The EU cannot provide more, the countries cannot get more, but they still are doing something and assure some sort of progress.
In 2016, the European Union launched its global strategy. How would you assess the objectives of the EU's global strategy in relationship to the Eastern Partnership states?
That's a very good question, and it reminds me the quote from Carl Bildt, actually the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Sweden, the one who was among those who launched Eastern Partnership, when he said that the Russians make you the proposals you cannot reject, whereas the EU makes you proposals you cannot understand. And that's very typical for understanding of European policies in the region, because we have many big players interested in promoting their ideas. And the assertiveness of these players is growing. We have Russian Federation, which is a big player in all countries of Eastern Partnership. We have China with growing assertiveness and with a free trade area with Georgia and with ambitions about Belt and Road Initiative. We have the United States, and this actor is back on the stage after a short break with Trump's presidency. Biden proves to express more interest towards the region. And we have sort of delayed reaction of the EU, which believes it still can play the role of a key player, and the Commission is going to be a geopolitical one. But I would say that the EU is rather reactive than proactive. And the problem is not with the EU, but with the fact that foreign policy still is mostly coordinated via the Council and via the member states. And the member states have too many different priorities. And it's not a secret that for some countries of the EU, the Mediterranean is much more important than the Eastern Partnership. And this combination of different compromises makes the EU strategy really sophisticated and a little bit messy. And that's why, yes, the EU is still a player and normative power still matters. But I wonder, is it competitive in comparison to the strategies of the Russian Federation, China, and the United States of America, not to mention the growing interest of Turkey in the region?
Talking about sophisticated concepts, one of the buzzwords of the EU's global strategy has been this new concept of resilience. Can the EU's resilience bring something new? How would you assess the EU's increased focus on resilience in relationship to the Eastern Partnership states?
Oh, the concept of resilience is very trendy nowadays. And if talking about the associations and the ideas resilience reminds me of, I would also mention good governance and sustainable development. All three ideas are very important from the perspective of the international organizations like the United Nations and the EU as well. And indeed, resilience is an important concept, in particular for the Eastern Partnership countries, which have to be resilient towards growing assertiveness of the big players. However, like in case of good governance, sometimes the political elites substitute it with their own understanding. And in the Balkan states and in the Eastern Partnership states, good governance was often misused for stable governance. And the EU basically swallowed that, because stabilitocracy was better than chaos, and that's why stable governments were perceived as good governments. I think that same can become true with resilience, because resilience as an addition to the reforms, to development, it's a good thing. But if resilience substitutes that all, that won't fly. The idea wouldn't fly. And the problem is that, again, if you want to be resilient, it means that you are rather reacting to the assertiveness of the others. And resilience should be supplemented with some proactive policies, and only with having two wings, like proactive policies and reaction to the assertiveness of the others, then you can fly. Without it, you will just stay on the ground.
That's right. Now, moving to security and stability, should the European Union perhaps focus more on the security of the Eastern Partnership states, considering the current context? should the EU build a more security partnership or security compacts with the Eastern Partnership states, or this is not really realistic, feasible at the present moment?
Recently, I had a series of interviews with experts from Eastern Partnership, and we touched this issue in the interviews. And definitely in the Eastern Partnership, there is a growing appetite for the security pillar. However, the understanding of security differs from country to country. If talking about Ukraine, for Ukraine, the hard security challenges are really important. And even before the war, there was an appetite for more EU in the security affairs. Same is true for Georgia and the Republic of Moldova. When talking about Belarus, then the government and the civil society perceive security from different perspectives. And for the government, security means oppressing the opposition. And I doubt the EU can be helpful in this regard for the authorities. However, the EU can be helpful for the opposition and for the civil society by assuring at least some human security aspects. Then for Armenia and Azerbaijan, it's quite difficult to find a common security denominator because the countries just witnessed a huge clash between two sides, and this smell of war is still in the air, and to find these denominators is extremely difficult. But still, both in Armenia and in Azerbaijan, experts highlighted that the EU can probably provide some additional instruments for assuring cybersecurity. And therefore, yes, there is an appetite for security. Some think that it should limit itself to cybersecurity issues. Some countries expect even more. Most of them keep in mind the human security dimension. And basically, with this appetite and with these ambitions, the ball is on the European part. If there is enough of will in Brussels, in Berlin, and in Paris to provide additional security instruments, can the EU play its role as a security actor in the region? And can it be something beyond the checkbook diplomacy? That's the question to be answered by the Geopolitical Commission of Ursula von der Leyen.
Okay, and now for the last question, and considering your expertise, how could the Eastern Partnership efficiency be enhanced? Do you have any recommendation for an improved Eastern Partnership in order to achieve better results?
Well, here I will follow the mainstream of the Eastern Partnership civil society representatives. And the idea is that the status quo already proves that the countries of the Eastern Partnership differ with their ambitions, with their expectations, with their approximation with the EU. And improving efficiency of the Eastern Partnership means accepting this and differentiating policies towards the EAP countries. What I mean, the Republic of Moldova, Ukraine, and Georgia proved that they are more interested, and they should be considered in a separate package in comparison to Belarus, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. And the trio should be recognized officially, and the trio should get more for more. Of course, we cannot leave aside Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Belarus, in particular civil society leaders in these countries, because without any support, they will simply vanish. And they still need to have some opportunities to interact with the EU, but Brussels should prove that more for more works, and probably that will invigorate the governments of the other countries to do more and to assure democratic and economic reforms which will contribute to the development of the region generally, and will bring the benefits to the people of all 6 countries.
Sergiy Gerasymchuk, thank you so much for this excellent take.
Thank you. Thank you.